Right, good evening everyone. Let me just do a little bit of the fiddle with my social media, and hopefully that will allow a few of you to come in. Always takes a few seconds for the systems to catch up with each other. There we are. And there we are. And we'll just wait for the clock to click through to 7. Don't think it's going to be very long. There we are. That's that cleared. That's cleared. Right. I click onto that. There we are. No sound on there. No sound on there. Hopefully everything is well. Good evening, Jan. Hello, hello, hello. Oh, I do want the gesso. There we are. Put the brain into gear. That's always helpful. Let's just angle that down. Wait a little bit. That's cool. And then let's just see what happens and whether we get some nice people coming in to join us this evening. So let's just do a little password waiting for that. There we are. There we are. Right, let's just grab that little lot. And hopefully, thank you. Good evening, Sarah. Welcome. Let me just sort of move this lot all out of the way. Got a whole collection of bits and pieces here. Too many bits and pieces. I took those up there. Lots of bits, which is cool. Yeah. We've got some ink available, so that's all right. That's all right. That's all right. And lovely, Jan. Thanking you so much for letting me know that. And let me just grab. Not using that one. We are using this one. Excellent. Cool. So, right. Well, we'll stop that whittling, that binging. Thank you, Sarah. Much appreciated. Let me shut down that Facebook stream, and then we'll be from there. So I am using Venice City of Art, and I have chosen to work with this mould and the coins mould. Did I have that one out? Possibly not. There we are. Really like this mould because I think the coins could be used for lots of things. Yes, they're American, but they could be European, so it doesn't really matter. So that's what we're doing. That's the plan. We might have another little tiny coin out from there and add to the mix, because why not? Why not? There we are. Let's just pop those somewhere now out of the way. Oops, let's get rid of the rubbish, then we can sit ourselves down. Thank you everyone for joining us. So, for those, I think everyone online already knows who I am, which is cool. And so I just have a wooden board. This board comes from Pentacolor, but you could use any surface you choose to, be it a canvas or, let's just get rid of all that gubbins, or a piece of MDF, or a piece of balsa wood. So you use what you have. And I'm just using my heat gun because that will soften the glue and get rid of that without it breaking. Good evening, Anya. Welcome. Welcome. So, I've got 2 different gessos on my worktop today. You don't very often see me mixing them up, but I'm going to today. and because I thought I'd explain why. So this is Pentart's acrylic primer, and it can be used on porous surfaces to prime, but it doesn't have a tooth to it, unlike the gesso that does. But it will block the tannins in the wood and will give me a uniform surface in the same way as gesso will do so, but it's a bit thinner than the Pentart gesso. If you don't have the acrylic primer, then go ahead and use the gesso if that's what you've got. I mean, you've often seen me using the gesso anyway, but I'm using this because it is thinner and it's going to give me a more even background, and it's just going to be just that little bit easier. So the UK has been basking in heat. I don't think anywhere near as hot as Europe, thankfully, because I think we all melt over here because we're really not set up for high temperatures. And it's been sticky. I have been just outside the amber warning area. Poor Sarah has been well and truly in the amber waiting area, and we haven't had sun today, Sarah, in the northwest, and we have had a little smattering of rain. And in fact, I was so worried about the light levels, even though it's the middle of summer. I've actually, let me move that into view, put the light on in my conservatory today, so that because when the rain clouds appeared, it went very dark, and I didn't think you were going to have a great colour representation if I didn't. So there we are. So that is the acrylic primer. It's just going to give me a nice even surface, and it will work quite nicely for that. Oh, my bad, I've left my water pot for my brushes in the kitchen. Well, that's not good, is it? Never mind. Okay, so that can sit over there. I'm not going to decorate the back because it'll be against a wall, but you could do if you wanted to. And then we have some extra pieces. This one actually comes from Silent Sea, I think. No, not from Silent Sea. I think comes from possibly the previous one, but anyway, either which way. And so I'm now swapping to gesso, and my rationale for swapping to the gesso is that this has a tooth, and I'm painting this onto a plasticized surface, so it needs a bit of tooth for everything to stick. So that's why I have swapped, but sometimes it's helpful to know the different effects that you can get. And I have chosen not to work with the new wall decor primers. That will certainly work for the wood. I'm not convinced it's the right product to use for the resin pieces. And that's why it's important to mix and match. If you have bonding primer instead, then use bonding primer, because that will prime non-porous surfaces as well. So there's lots of primers in the primer family, and they all have slightly different effects, and that's why it's important that you know what they are, where you can mix and match, and where one is absolutely better than others. So I personally like the acrylic primer, the first one I used for my non-porous surfaces, because it's thinner and spreads than further than the primer paste, and is less clumpy. And but I will quite happily use the primer paste as an alternative for that. If I'm covering assorted metal objects and things on a canvas in an assemblage style project, then I will use either black or white gesso paste to cover all of the various textures. But if I am going to just concentrate on resin pieces or I've got glass or plastic surfaces, then I will use the bonding primer. I'm not surprised, Sarah. I think the weather has been really not very pleasant for those of us who don't do heat. Right, I'm going to pop that into there because having left my brushes in the wrong place on a pot of water cleaner. So let's now just pop this little lot, including the canvas, up here. So 2 different primers, two different reasons. And we're just going to give these a little bit of a blast. Right. Good evening, Teresa. Welcome, my darling. If you don't understand anything, then please just let me know, and I'll try and at least show you the pots of paints as we go. So let's just get this lot dry. Having not used any resin pieces for a little bit, I haven't used 2 last week. I thought I would go back to my roots this week and use this. The title for my project, because I do like to be a little bit abstract in my thought process, comes from one of the chipboards from the section, Venice City of Arts, and having Googled it or put it into Google Translate, I'm sure there are other engines available, it means ancient bookbinding. So we've got some books involved in this piece. Good evening, Sheila. Sorry I haven't seen you come in. Hello, Juliana. Thank you also for joining us this evening. Good evening, Anna. Let's just get these dry. I'm not doing anything very complicated tonight. Sometimes it's worth pairing things back, isn't it? But we are going to be layering and mixing things up. So let's just move some of this out of the way. It's not quite dry, so let me just give this a little bit more flush, because if I don't, I will transfer the primer onto my rice paper, and that's not what I want to do. Good. So I'm going to use, for the next step, Pentacolor decoupage glue and varnish in the matte. I could just as easily have used the Silky Shine version. For this project, because it's a slightly vintagey style, I wouldn't use the glitter, and I could have used the Decor Soft Ultra Matte decoupage glue just as easily. So let's just pop a layer of this over here, all over here, and then we can pop our rice paper into place, and then we can seal it. Yeah, we've got that dry enough. There we are. And I'm like, well, so the primer will give me a nice white surface, so the colours of the rice paper will remain true, and hopefully will stop too much of the glue and the varnish from sinking in to the bare wood surface. I think some might still sink in, but that's okay. So let's just pop that all over there, and we can add some more as we need. Good evening, Ari. Welcome, my darling. Your makes recently have been incredible. I absolutely love them. If anyone isn't following Arkellis on her social media pages, then I would wholeheartedly recommend it. Her work is absolutely stunning, and yeah, absolutely. So I've managed to get that down in one move without having too many crinkles, so that's always good. I'm going to start in the middle, and then I can push out any air bubbles. Not that I've got many, I don't think, but there we are. And then I can make sure I've got this all covered and protected. There we are. So this is one of the A4 rice papers from the recent collection. There we are. There was a bubble there that I've managed to push up now. There we are. And there's a little bit of a gap at the top, but don't not fret. We will cover that. We can deal with that. And that's because my wood piece is not quite A4, just a tad bigger than A4, but that's also okay. And I always keep my strokes for my glue and varnish going in a vertical direction, because then if I age it, which I'm not actually going to do today, then the lines are all one way and it just looks a bit neater. There we are. So that's a goodie there of that. Hopefully all of the wrinkles will come out of that. And we'll pop that there. You're very welcome, my darling. Good evening, Elizabeth. Welcome. Right. Let's just pop that into that wet baby wipe to protect that and give these a wee bit of a brush dry. And to be fair, we can put that once it started to dry off to the side, and need a little bit more glue underneath there. So let's just, I can see that it's not quite caught down on that edge underneath. And there we are. Let's just pop that into there. Taking that down. And stick that back in there. There we are. So let's get this drying. And then we'll abandon this to finish off drying to itself whilst we paint some of those resin pieces. So there is another live in English this week for Pentacolor. It's my lovely friend Gill's contest, who will be live on Thursday. He has a much more vintage brocante for rock style than myself, but he is a font of knowledge for all products Pentacolor. So it is always worth watching. Even if the overall style might not be the one that you go to, you will undoubtedly learn about the products really quite well. So I need this to be dry so that I can sand the edges, because I have a curved piece of paper, which is obviously needing to be curved with board, and I've got a shaped a plain A4 piece of paper. So I'm going to pop that down off to the side to carry on drying and cool down. And then I am choosing to work with the new watercolour paints. There we are. Right. Eeny, meeny, miny, mo, dark beige and light patina. So there we are. So these are the wall decor paints that I'm using, but if these are not, you don't have these products, then feel free to get an alternative one set of paint, products that use your matte paints if that's what you've got. And we're going to do this in 2 colours. So, and then we're going to add a little bit of Lisseur to it, because why not? So yes, we'll probably go quiet then. whilst we carry on, because why not? So I've just chosen, I've sort of taken my inspiration for the colours from the papers and the products on the lineup. See, I didn't necessarily want that bit to be brown, but hey ho, we're going to definitely have the window, the windows parts a different colour to the top, so that's okay. So there's some doors in this mould. So this cast is actually the whole reason why I got this mould in the first place, because it's just such a different shape. You've got masses and masses of window moulds. Do you really need more? And then I saw the shape and went, yeah, you do. But we all know that I'm a bit of a mould addict. So there we are. So that's the plan. There we are. From there. There we are. We're just going to give a layer of paint here, and then we can move to some of the other pieces. Let this bit dry, and then we can move back over and add some more colour. There we are. And the wall decor paints give a really nice coverage with one coat, so that's makes it cost effective, and it's always a bonus, isn't it, when you don't need to paint something more than one layer. There we are. The bottom of this is not going to show on the finished piece, but hey ho, we'll still paint it anyway, because why not? So this is dark beige, which is really quite a nice stony colour, I think. There we are. And there's definitely quite a lot of artistic license in our make tonight. Okay. Good. There we are. Let's just do that. Let's just, in the absence of water, we'll just clean our brush on there. And then I've got these are almost like coins, so we're going to go with grey, and then we're going to age them and metallic-y effect them. So we're going to do a bit of both. Yeah. Okay, dear. So there we are. So let's just pop these onto there. We're not going to, we haven't got mountains of colouring and aging to do tonight. You'd be delighted to know. Maybe you wouldn't be delighted to know. Maybe you're quite happy to be here for a wee bit longer this evening. Maybe. Anyway, we're going to have the coins all sort of ancient silver, tarnished silver is my feeling for tonight, rather than other colours of metal. But you could do these in any colour that you wanted, really. If you wanted to have them bronzed or copper, then there are appropriate metallic paints from Pentacolor that will do that for you just as easily. So there we are. So these paints are reasonably thick. You can add water to them. They're water based, so if they're getting very thick, then a spritz of water will help preserve them. But if you're painting them onto a bigger surface, then a spritz of water will also help them spread further, making them relatively cost effective for you. There we are. Let's just come across the end of that. There we are. Oh, I hope everyone is having an okay time. So let me just I'll pop that back onto there, clean the hands of the mess. Lid that. In fact, I'm going to I'm actually going to spritz it before I lid it, because it has been so hot here, and I think it will be better with a little spritz into that, and then that can go on the floor. And then I have chosen light patina, which is a beautiful soft bluey green. Stick that over there. Look, she says. There we are. So let's just paint these doors. And obviously you can spend a lot longer if you're not on a live to paint these in with a little bit more care. You can come over it a second time if you want to, and pick up the bits that you might miss the first time round. Have I missed bits? Yeah. Am I worried? No. There we are. We'll just take our time and get these reasonably well painted. So there isn't any of this bluey green obviously in the background paper. There are on some of the other embellishments that I'm going to use, but I don't just want one area of this bluey green paint on the finished piece. So I am going to intentionally, with the more scrolly, intricate molded pieces, paint them in this colour as well, because it's going to allow me to have a visual triangle of these colours on my piece, which will look better and will help take the eye around the project. So that's a visual triangle, either in terms of a shape or a colour or both, or because you've put three of the same type of item in, just gives your eyes somewhere to rest, and then our eyes naturally then go looking for the same sort of thing. And if you dot those around your project, then that will mean that your eye goes all over it, and therefore you actually look at the whole project. Now these could just as easily have been painted in the stone, but as I say, I'm deliberately wanting to pop this colour around the rest of my piece, so that's why I have chosen to do this. And we're going to bring out the details with low lights and highlights, because it's just the way I work, isn't it? So let's just use the rest of that paint that's on there. Let's just flick that off there. I can see that on my coins I've got areas that I haven't got completely painted, but I'm not overtly worried by that. So that can go down there. That can go down there. Eeny, meeny, miny, mo. Right. We need that. We need that. We need that. And we might need some of that. So let's just give this a wee bit of a blast to dry, so that we can then do some additions onto these pieces and bring out some of the details, because if there's lots of details in the mould, I think it's nice to be able to bring out all of the details and show them off to their best extent. In an ideal world, I would take, once these are dry, I will take a just to provide a layer of protection and make it easier for me to wipe back some of the colour as I add them. Reasonably dry. Ooh, she says, didn't need to go up there. Let's just pop that brush to dry. So I have Decor Varnish Soft in metallic in the matte version. There we are. And when they stick, it because you've got varnish where you don't want it. There we are. So forcing a pokey tool underneath will help. Yeah, I can see where I've got a whole mountain of gubbins around the top of here. So let's just take that off, because it's A, will let it seal better, and B, will make my life easier going forward. So let's just take that there off there. It'll peel quite nicely. There we are. And then let's just give this all a little coat of varnish, and we can give this a little blast dry too. It just adds another layer of protection to your piece, particularly if you're going to be adding things and rubbing off as well. Just helps keep everything in place, and particularly if you haven't got them completely dry when you are. There we are. So the risk when you see me sort of heat drying things is that I dry the surface, which allows me to handle them, but we don't actually have it fully dry all the way through, and that's not helpful. Let's just put some of that excess on there. Don't need masses of varnish, because if you put masses of varnish on, then you'll destroy all of the detail, because it'll fill things up. That grey paint was not completely dry, but that's fine. So I've picked up some grey colour on there, but that's actually going to help soften that as well. So that's okay. If you're making for yourself, I suggest that you just let things properly dry rather than try speeding things up fully. There we are. Let's just pop that onto there. And then we can come around. There we are. There we are. So I love the shape of this window. Is it a window? Is it a door? Could be either, couldn't it? It's definitely has a Moroccan feel to me. Not too sure it necessarily says Venice, but I guess someone at Pentacolor knows better than me and feels that it is Venice inspired. There we are. So, especially the fiddly blitz. I'm deliberately keeping my heat gun moving, because that's going to allow me to make sure that the varnish doesn't bubble as we go. And when they get warm, I'm going to swap and we're going to do it, but it's standing on the ribbon piece. I tend to find that the varnishes feel tacky, and more so when they are warm. So for me, actually just giving them a little bit of time to cool down and then reheat them in them sometimes is helpful. So let's just pop those over there, because we haven't finished with them yet, but they need a little bit of cool down. And let's see if our board is dry, and it's not completely dry. So let's also give this a quick blast. That's the centre of that reasonably dry. And we'll go around the edge and make sure that's as properly dry before I sand the curved surface. I think this rice paper would look lovely on a book box, quite nicely on front of a book box. And you could use it entirely on its own if that's what, you know, rather than needing to add lots of layers to it. There we are. And let's just take a sanding block and as ever, I'm lifting up and pushing down rather than it all being, I can still feel it's actually tacky at the top, but there we are. Let's just shape this off. There we are. That can now sit to dry. Meeny, miny, where is my gold wax? There's my gold wax. So let's just take a little bit of wax, and I'm just going to add that to the edge. And I'm deliberately going to pop it up onto the surface so that I'm framing this piece in. You know, you could take some moulded pieces and put those all the way around the edge of the board, and I have done that in the past, but it does take a reasonable amount of time on a live to do that. So there we are. Just add the wax all the way around. She says, I'm going to have a sticky, mucky, icky fingers in a minute. But there we are. I can still feel that this board is tacky. And that's because, I think, because my room is really, really humid. So things are taking that bit longer to dry. And by bringing that in, the tiny area that I haven't got covered, I can then link in quite nicely and get rid of that. These steps are important to me. There we are. Let's just carry on around here. This is a step that I actually quite often do when everything is fully dry and after the live. There we are. This is also allowing those pieces to cool down, and I will need I think to give them another blast with my heat gun before I can there we are. Does that look okay? I think. And a little bit more on those edges. And we've gone round the sides. Just just going to take it up and smudge it onto the surface a bit more. There we go. Cool. So, right, let's just de-wax those fingers. I haven't finished with that wax, but we'll de-wax those fingers because it's going to, otherwise it will get everywhere. And that's not what I wanted to do. Okay, that needs a little bit more of a blast. So let's just give these a bit more of a blast, and then we can start adding some extra details. And I deliberately chose gold wax to go around the wood board because of the vintage colours. But I thought that worked better. Right. Okay. So, number 1, black Antique Legatoria. So this is a translucent, but it's very black. There we are. So let's just pop some of that down there. And I'm deliberately putting a little bit of water down, having dried off that thing, because it's going to help the black spread better. Okay. And it will be softer. And I'm not going to leave these black, but I do want them to be aged in appearance. And then we're going to make them metallic in a minute as well. So there we are. Now, because these are water soluble and I have varnished these pieces, oh, there's one I have left. There we are. I should be able to wipe this back quite nicely. So let's just cover that all the way around that edge. Good. So let's just take off what I don't want. So that's now become much more aged. There we are. Just adding some aging to these pieces. So they look a bit more like pens, older coins that have been found in keeping with the Antica. Right. So I now have the Umbra Legatoria, which is also an antique colour. Let's just cover that. Pop those over there. I have treated myself to a new one of these. There we are. So that is literally just water, ladies. There's nothing more complicated in that bottle than that. Let's just take some of that off, and let's just cover that beautiful bluey green. It's not as mad as it sounds, honestly. It isn't, I can assure you. There we are, but it is going to help. I don't necessarily want it all to be quite as drippy as this, but hey ho. But it's going to allow me to antique this. Look at the state of my fingers. Now then, I haven't seen any comments for a bit, and sometimes that's because, yeah, it is. It's not been, not necessarily been updating as much as I would have appreciated it to. There we are. There we are, there we are, there we are. Right, let's just wipe off some of this. There we are. So that's now more in keeping, I feel, with the project. More antique. And it allows all that detail that's in that mould to really, really shine. So we can pop that over there. And then we can clear our desks of 55,000 pieces of product. There we are. Cool. Pop that over there. Give the hands a proper wipe so I don't transfer stuff over. Get rid of that. Decided I'm not going to do that, which is fine. Right. I know what I did say I was going to do though, didn't I? So we have metallic Leather in green silver. Not too sure why it says green silver, because it's silver, but I guess that it has a duality to it, and that there is a silver hue to here. And we're going to do what I did last week. There we are. We're going to pop it onto a brush, and we're just going to kiss these coins. So it adds a bit of a shimmer to it. I can see it. I don't know. So that's pre. Just brightens the surface. And that's post. So pre. Yes, you can see. So without and with. So that is literally just the metallic lacer tucked over the top of there. And I could have used the gold, but I haven't got that out. So we're not going to use the gold lacer. We're going to just add some ordinary wax onto these very brocade texture. There we are. So all of that detail, low lighted, highlighted, a little bit of pizzazzed, because why not? Why not? Why not? Right, I'm going to clear some decks. I'm going to pick up some one of those all over to the side. We're going to pop that over there. And I have lots of pieces of ephemera. Some of these are paper cutouts. This is a thin paper cutout. And some of these are die cut chipboard. So this is the paper, and this is the die cut chipboard. So you can see that they're different thicknesses of the piece. And the starting point is going to be to grab my heavy body gel. And we will need that. And I need my proper inking tool. Thank you. Thank you very much, Sheila, for letting me know. Sometimes it's difficult when you've got your head down when you're working. You don't necessarily see everything. So I'm just going to pop some of my heavy body gel. Now I'm very happy using the matte, but don't let it squidge out because this one will dry opaque. So that I'm going to pop here. Okay. So let's just now take, it's not the ink one I want. So this is the paper cut, and I'm going to get rid of the white edges. So I am using a dye-based ink from Vicky Papino, but you could use the archival one as well. And that one, I'm going to have that piece I want there. Now then, we have some books. These come from the paper cut collection as well. So let's just start to pop these where I'm thinking we might have them, because it's all about the layering. So this piece is an ephemera. So that bit, I'm going to take my express glue and just pop some of that all the way there. I'm adhering paper to paper. Yeah. So that will work onto there. And I'm going to take this piece. Now, the ephemera have a shine on them. If you don't like it, then take your matte varnish and paint it over with your matte varnish, and that will deal with the shine. And these are self-adhesive. You just have to find the bit at the bottom. And sometimes finding the edge to peel back is a bit of a pain. There we are. We've managed that. So there we are. Let's just pop that over there. And we're going to tuck that onto there, resting on the bottom of that shelf. Okay. We've got too many bits out here. Okay, so I'm actually going to want to add some more of these pieces onto here. That was a mistake, wasn't it? Hey ho, but there we are. You can generally lift up your ephemera, so we'll just lift that up. So I've got more of the paper cut. So let me just. What you can't lift up though is once you've used your express glue, that doesn't work. Okay, so that's going to go over there as if it's at the front of those shelves. I definitely think adding the ink makes a big difference though. So we'll just create our base. Make sure I've got those up the right way, because that's always helpful, isn't it? Titles up the wrong way would not be looking so very clever. There we are. So put that down there. Now then, I do have another set. Oh no, that's a set of books. Okay, so that will work for the time being. I happen to know where I want this. So this is a tag cut from the paper elements. So let's just add that into place. That's going to link over onto there. And right. Good. Eeny, meeny, miny. Can I find all the pieces? Oh, I'm fairly sure. Yeah, you see, I knew I had another coin. So this coin comes from in the collection. And this is another piece of ephemera. Let's not try chopping off our finger with the knife. Hi, Maxine. Let's just lift that off there. So I've taken off the sticky layer there and the depth of the ephemera piece. So I'm just going to tuck that up into there. So again, this piece comes from the paper cut area. That's going to cut onto there. And as you know, I'm not afraid of layering my pieces. Oh, she says. There we are. So we're going to take that, pop that onto there. And I do have some more plans for up there, but we might not use them. So I've got some little pieces of music paper, because why not? That's what you'd have in a library, isn't it? Oh, right, there we are. So that's the piece I want. So I've got the word explore. And I'm just going to give that a little bit of a bow. A little bit of glue at both ends, and hopefully in the middle of there. And then it's going to sit. There we are. Pop it down. Pop it down. So it looks like it's anchored. There we are. And let's just let that grab. There we are. Cool. Inny minny. Right, we're getting there, ladies. So I now need just some extra bits. So we've got some more books here, because the whole piece is called Antique Bookbinding. That's the correct way up. That is a piece of die cut. So the die cuts are thicker than the ephemera, but don't have a removable backing. If you don't like them as thick as they are, though, you can take, you can split it so that you don't have such a depth. So I actually want to pop that up there. So I'm going to pop a blob of glue onto there and stick that into place. Half on, half off. There we are. And I want that to be up. And let me just grab. Let's see what we've got. I normally have a whole pile of canvas spaces, and I think that they will work quite nicely. So there we are. Yeah, they're going to work quite nicely. So let's just pop a canvas spacer onto there. Do I want it up another layer is the question. And I don't think so. I just want a little bit of a gap. There we are. So let's pop that onto there. Pop that over there. So I've got my label. Got my page title there. And then we've got some other bits to tuck in. So that's just. So these are flowers from the ephemera set. So again, it has a label on them. So let's just see if we can hoik that backing off. There we are. Once it starts to move, it will move reasonably easily. Slow and steady, and you'll get it off in one go. Otherwise, you'll end up having to pick it several times. So there we are. And I'm thinking that that can sit there. Okay, that can sit there. This is a piece of ephemera. It comes from, there's music pieces in. There's a beautiful violin in this collection of pieces. Let's see if we can get the... Yeah, I think it's going to be better going up that way. But, whoever knows. Who never knows. There we are. Oh, she says. And I'm going to pop that up there. So I want this piece tucked under there. And then we'll come back to that visual triangle. Okay, so that will make a mess. That will dry, having splodged it out. clear, white. So let's just wipe it off out of the way. Okay. So I've now got that blue here, that becomes one, and down here. And that piece of paper is why I chose to paint these pieces in that patina colour. Okay. So we're going to add, we're just going to start tucking in some of these coins now. So there, up and down. Do I want it up there? Do I want it tucked there? I think I'm actually going to pop it there, and I've got another plan to put onto there. So let's just add a little bit more of that onto there. Let's tuck that. Yeah, I think it goes that way. There we are. And that can then tuck under there as well. And then that says 1 cent, so we need to, yeah, get that up the right way. So I'm going to pop that. Up the right way. It is up the right way, so that's going to link into there. Pop that there. So it's coming together slowly. So we have some extra bits and pieces to tuck in. Always straight, always helpful to be straight, isn't it? So I'm going to start to tuck in some of these other pieces that I have lying around. There we are. Let's just tuck a little floral into there. And another floral into there. It's just going to link that better. And I'm going to pop that little floral onto the top of there. And I know I haven't inked it, ladies, my bad. There we are. Okay. So let's just then start tucking some of these other pieces into our piece. Okay, so ink. And then I'm going, that's a piece of ephemera, so it will hold its shape. I can pop a blob of that into there. And that's going to stay just linking. Just there we are, that's better. Pop that into there. Hi, Blanche. So let's just pop that piece into there. Let's just add that onto there. Pop that there. Okay. So we've got, go on, under you go. There we are. Yeah. And it's now become very warm and sticky in my craft room. That piece is going to go there. There we are. I'm going to pop that one into that. So at this point out, it's really then just a question of tucking in what you want, where you want, and just having a play till your heart's content, really. There we are. Adding the ink does make a big difference, though. It's definitely worth it. There we are. It's less floaty now. Now then. So we've got little roses that come in the part of the collection. So that can go into there. Oh, my camera has just flashed. I've seen it just do so. So let's just add a little bit more ink onto there. And I'm going to pop that into there, just poking its head out. Where have I put it? That's where I've done it. Get rid of the gunk that I've now splattered every which way. There we are. I knew I had some more of those. There we are. There we are. Let's just add that into there. So it is at this page, for me, it's just about adding some extra layers and some dimension into my pieces as we go. All right. Pop that onto there. Let's get rid of that before it makes a mess. There we are. Little floral. That's going to go onto there. So that piece is no longer flat. So, there we are. You can see some bits that I thought I might initially put in that I might not be putting in, but that's fine. There we are. Let's tuck that under there. And then, as I say, at this point, it's very much just about having a play, adding until you're content with your piece. Let's get rid of some of that extra. There we are. There we are. Let's get rid of that. We are nearly through all of these pieces, promise. There we are. Do I want to add any of these? Oh, let's just move that number so it's accurate. And I don't think I do, but we do have another piece of that. So let's just, we might leave the swirly bits that I got from the paper cuts out. And I think that will sit comfortably under there, yes. So I'm not going to add splatters to this one tonight. I might change my mind come the morning because we all know what I'm like. There we are. But we've got 3 bits of music. We've got a flower here, and a flower cluster there. So those are 3s. We've got some pinks in going round in a nice circular loop. And we've got some extra pieces. And we've got some metallic coins. I'm hoping it looks like a bit like you might have some extra pieces on a shelf in a library that have all been decorated and left to embellish. So ladies, that is our make for tonight. So I hope you like it. I'm sorry if you don't. We all have different likes and different dislikes, don't we? So it's always difficult to know what people like and what they don't like. My live for next week is scheduled. It's going to feature a gondola, and then I might move back and do some more art journal pages the following week. So for now, ladies, this is what we're up to. I would like to wish you all a safe week. Be kind to each other. I hope if you have worries that they are small, and if they are big, that they sort themselves out without too much trouble. And my thoughts and prayers go to everyone who might be in need of those today. So good night for now, and I shall see you online next Tuesday. Bye.